Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gail Carson, your host for Women in Business, a show that celebrates women and their accomplishments as entrepreneurs or senior managers. As a woman business owner for over 5 decades, I take great pride in bringing these interviews to you. I'm also president of the SOB clubs, so if any of you are interested in going on to one in your area, just let us know. Well, my guest today is a fabulous woman, and her name is Marnie Swedberg. She's a businesswoman who is the author of a dozen how-to books. She's manager of a family restaurant. She's a radio host, a public speaker, a mentor, and a web hostess who began school having trouble learning to read, and teachers had neither the patience nor the time to deal with her needs. Later on, she endured fires, floods, tornadoes, car wrecks, burglary, and the death of her beloved dad, known to the neighborhood kids as Mr. Good Guy. A model of comeback behavior, she has spoken at such mega corporations as AT&T, Pillsbury, Prudential, and Honeywell. Welcome, Marnie.
Hi, Gail, and hi, everybody. It's great to be here.
Well, you're a busy woman, and you have a busy schedule. And I want to know, and I'm sure our listeners want to know, how you manage it.
Well, one thing at a time. It's wonderful to actually be aware of how much time. Time is a really interesting phenomena. When you think about being silent for 60 seconds, it can feel like forever. And yet 60 minutes can fly by without you recognizing where it went. And so just being aware of time and taking control of that, not control in a bad way, but control in a good way. So one of the things that I do, Gail, is I have a daily planning to-do list. And over at Marnie.com, there's a free sample of this so you can see what I'm talking about and get one there. But it's just a to-do list. And I go ahead and I list out everything that I think I'm supposed to do today or need to get done today. And then I itemize how many minutes it takes for each one. I go by when it's due. I prioritize it. And then if there's 23 hours of work today, then I realize I'm going to have to, either do things faster, delegate things, or change things around to a different day. And it really makes it doable. Whereas otherwise it would just always feel like a million things to do and never could get it all done, never be able to achieve the sense of having accomplished something. And so I think taking charge of it is the first thing.
Well, I think you've just said some very interesting things, but I wonder whether or not there are people who just put things down on their to-do list because they like scratching them off. There are lots.
That's legit. That's legit.
That just sounds like something that might happen. Well, now, so you're a very goal-oriented person because just by your intro, I know that there are so many things you've accomplished. Mm-hmm. So why do you think that many people don't reach their goals, and what can they do about it?
Well, the first reason people don't reach their goals is because they haven't clearly identified them. When we think about a sporting event, it's really obvious to us when there's a goal made. It goes across a line, or it goes into a hoop, or it goes into a hole, or something where it's really clearly defined. They made it. They got the point. They scored. But in our lives, we don't get that clear about most things that we want to see happen. We just have this kind of wish list in the back of our head somewhere, and that's about as far as it goes. And so when we take the time to really clearly define the goal, when we know we've met it, how will we know? How will we know? And what is it going to take to get us there? And kind of work backwards from when it's there, we know we've met it, and work backwards from there and start accomplishing things one at a time in order to achieve the goal. Well, then all of a sudden things really start moving and picking up. And as you achieve your first few goals, it really builds momentum, and it allows you to be confident enough to go for bigger goals.
Well, do you find that the people that you meet, do you think most of them are goal-oriented, or do you think that many people have just kind of accepted their lot in life? This is where I work, and this is what I do, and I get in at 9 and I leave at 5, and then my life really starts because that's when my family is involved and so forth. I mean, you're a busy woman, so how have you combined everything?
Oh, well, I do this one training called The Success Principles of Olympians, Presidents, and CEOs. And in that training, I talk about the difference between the average Joe and someone who's an Olympian, the president of a country, or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And honestly, by the time you get to the point where you're an Olympian or in one of these other major roles, you really don't distinguish between on time, off time, work or play or whatever. It's just your life. You call it, this is my life. And so everything is intertwined with everything else, whereas the average person actually clocks in and clocks out. Now, if we were to say the president of the United States would clock in at 8 o'clock and clock out at 4 o'clock, no matter what's happening in the world, we would think that would be ridiculous. But for the average person, we say that's normal and should be that way. So you have to distinguish in your own mind, are you going to be normal and average, or are you going to do something a little bit more than that, or maybe a lot more than that? If you're going to do something more than normal and average, then you have to get rid of the clock in, clock out mentality, and you have to say, my life is always on. I may be sleeping, but my life is always on. This is all part of me. This is all part of who I am, and to balance it that way.
Well, I totally agree with you because people have always said to me, first of all, why don't you retire? And I say, to what? Because they say, well, you could do everything you want to do. And I said, well, I'm doing everything I want to do now. So I think that's true. And then, of course, my entire life, which I don't necessarily say everyone has to live like this, but my entire life has been focused around my career, and I was lucky to be married to a guy that loved that he was fine with it, and he was fine with being, the major caretaker, shall we say, of the kids. And he worked all the time, and he had his own business, but he was on a different path. And so I think it's true. You've got to look at your life in a total way, that everything is a part of it, and not separate one thing from the other. But you also have these success ABCs, A, B, C, D, E. So walk us through that.
Absolutely. The A and the E are the bookends. So if you say you want to assess everything, A is the assess. And you're going to look at everything in your life and you're going to say, is this really what I want to be doing right now? Is this really what I should be doing right now? And to tell you the truth, people, like, I've written 12 books. I honestly don't sit around watching TV very much at all. And, I just don't. If I have free time, I'm usually reading someone else's book. That's what I'm doing, as I'm really learning more and investing more, assessing. If you need to travel to get to your job and you're going to be in your car for 40 minutes every day, you can just be in your car for 40 minutes every day, or else you can actually use the time in your car as your own personal university, or whatever you want to do, your own private time with God, or your time to call your family members and actually increase relationships. So, when you assess everything and assign value to it, that's when you're going to start to see things really change, because most of us go through life kind of just la, 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 and we aren't really paying attention to what's happening. And all of those minutes just fritter away and we don't have anything to show for them. And most of the minutes that we have, we really can have something to show for them. So assess everything, assess and assign value to everything. And then batch. B is for batch. And that's whenever you can, get the most mileage out of whatever it is you're doing. So I've written a book called Kitchen Shortcuts. And this is how to maximize every minute that you're in your kitchen. I always say, when you want to cook gourmet and you have time to play, go for it. Spend 4 hours making a wonderful, fantastic meal. That's play. That's fun. That's wonderful. But on the everyday meals, you really want to get in and out of the kitchen as quickly as possible, serving the best meal possible. So what I teach is a method called one mess, many meals. And all you do is, when you're making the mess in the kitchen anyway, you actually maximize your minutes while you're there when you're making the mess. And you actually have components for additional meals by the time you're done with this one. And so that's just one of the strategies in there. But the batching technique goes way back to hospitals. Batch all the babies in one section of the hospital, and they batch all the crisis, in the ER, and they batch all the heart patients together in the cardiac unit. Hospitals batch all the time. And we all batch. The grocery store batches all the dairy products together. But when we come to our personal lives, we kind of forget to batch things. And we just do things one at a time because, well, that's how our mom did it, or that's how we all have always done it. So learning to batch is hugely time-saving, Gail, as far as being able to recover some of the time that we lost.
I would say certainly that batching. I mean, I do that instinctively. When I go to the gym, that's my errand time, and I do everything in a certain
Right.
location. I would never
Right.
just run out for one thing, or anything else. And even when I'm on the plane, that's when I do my reading. That's when I do my writing. I agree. I think batching is really important. Well, what is C?
C is to calculate. And I have this little prioritization calculator. And again, all this there's free stuff over at Marnie.com. Just go to the free stuff and you can get out all this. But it's just results divided by investment equal priority. So what we tend to do is we tend to prioritize by, which fire, which fire we need to put out, or, which thing we like to do the best, or whatever. But if we would step back just a little bit and just say, but what is really the best thing to do? What is the most needed thing here? Sometimes we get a different result. And when we calculate things out, it really does help us to clarify what's the best investment of our time. And so results divided by investment equals priority. So if you can invest $1 and get $100 worth of results, that's a great.
I love that, Marnie. I think I never heard that before. I think that's fantastic. I mean, that would really change a lot of people of what they do, because when there are so many things that we think are a priority, but they're not our priority. They're someone else's priority. And so when you talk about a result divided by the investment, whether it be dollars or time or emotion or whatever it is, I think that's amazing. I love that.
Absolutely. And a lot of people confuse procrastination. Procrastination is really the intentional engagement of the brain on a low priority item in order to avoid a high priority item. So this calculator really helps us to, to quit playing games with ourselves and to really say, no, this is the most important thing for me to get done. Once I get it done, I can move on to these more entertaining things, but at least I will have this high priority item done.
Fantastic. So then what is the D?
D is delegate or do it. And honestly, we all have a problem with delegation. Most of us really, especially managerial type personalities, we really want to do it ourselves, not because we want to do it, but because A, if we pass it off, it probably won't get done the same way we would do it, and we don't like that. And B, a lot of times when someone else does it, we have to come along behind and fix it up a little bit, or, make it so that it works. And so we tend to have a difficult time delegating. And in a small business setting, most small business owners tell me, I can't afford to delegate. But I always use the examples that we are already delegating so much. And if you once again go back to the calculator, you realize that it's worth it for you to delegate. Whenever you can, you need to be freed up to do the things that only you can do, and let other people do the things that they can do. So, for example, Gail, do you personally raise your own cows and raise your own chickens so that you can get all your own food, and do your own grain and all that, so you can get all your own food yourself? Or do you delegate some of that responsibility to the grocery store?
Absolutely, to the grocery store.
Right. And same with our clothing. We don't grow our own cotton or, silk and bring it in and weave it up. We just go to the store and we buy it. But whenever we do those things, we are, in fact, delegating. We're delegating those responsibilities to someone else, and we're happy to pay for that. But when it comes to delegating things in a small business, we'll talk ourselves out of that in a heartbeat. Oh, I can't afford that. I certainly couldn't do that. I'm going to have to do this myself. And the reality is that you're losing a lot of value because you're doing things that you should not be doing. You should be having somebody else do those things.
Well, I agree with you. I think in the beginning, when people first start their own businesses, they have to do everything. I mean, they are starting with very often zero clients, $0, and so forth. The problem is when they do start to get business and they do start to get additional responsibilities, they can't let go of what they are already doing because it's so easy for them, because they've done it for so long. And that is the hardest decision to make is when you know that you can do it in 5 minutes. It might take somebody else 10 or 15. They may not do it exactly the way you do, but I always use my
Right.
kids as an example. I say, when my kids were little and they had to make their beds, no, they didn't make their beds very well, but it was their bed and it was their bedroom. And if they were happy with the way the bed was made, that was fine with me. But they did learn responsibility and what their chores were, so to speak, every single day. And that worked, So take us through now to the last one, the E.
The E is for evaluate, and that's the other bookend. So you start with assessment. You assess, should this even be in my life? If it should be in my life, I need to assign it value. Where does it belong? What am I going to do with it in my life? And then when you get to the E, you're constantly evaluating. So I like to use the example of my husband and I bought a restaurant in 2002. And at that time I was homeschooling, and he was working full-time in business. And so I became the manager of this restaurant. And it was very consuming. It was